Now that we have all of our variation on a theme patterned motifs added as a new layer to our collage papers, I really liked how some of mine turned out. Some are more simplistic, which is fine, but then some of them I really thought they turned out well. I like how I painted the background a little bit darker with a new coat of watercolor to let those lines stand out. I really like the dots and dashes on this one. So now that you have all of those done, we are ready to begin the collage part for this project. In your supply kit at the beginning of the year, you should have gotten one really large sheet of 12 by 18 white cardstock paper. Now this is a pretty thick, heavy, durable cardstock paper, and we're going to be measuring and cropping this down using half of it and then saving the other half for later. If you do not have this sheet, I'm going to show you an alternative that you can use at home. Take the long side of this piece of paper, the 18 inches across, and grab a ruler and a pencil. If I line this ruler up across the top, I'm going to line the edge of the paper up with the 0 on the ruler, and I'm going to make a little tick mark at the 9-inch marker. That's going to divide this paper exactly in the middle. I should be able to measure the other side and see that it is 9 inches. So once I have the top measured, where it's 9 inches from the left over, I'm going to slide down to the bottom and measure the same thing there. So line my 0 up with the edge of the paper and make a tick mark at the 9-inch. Turn it sideways so you can see it a little bit better. But I'm going to line my ruler up with both of those tick marks very carefully and draw a line all the way across. Now I'll take scissors and cut this apart. And so one page I'm going to use, and then these other page I'm going to save for later and use it for another assignment later in the semester. Now, if you don't have the white cardstock to use for this project, one alternative that you could use is to take a piece of cardboard, maybe from a shipping box or a cereal box if you have it large enough, and cut that down to a 9 by 12 inch size. That could work as well. Or you could use a piece of mixed media sketchbook paper or a piece of poster board, something that's thicker to help support the collage. So to get started today, you will need to cover your table work surface with some scrap paper or newspaper, something to prevent it from getting messy. And then you'll need your piece of 9 by 12 cardstock paper or cardboard, whichever one you're planning on using. You will also need some liquid Elmer's glue and a disposable throwaway container, something that you can put your glue out on and then just throw it away later. And then you'll also need a water cup and a paper towel and a very inexpensive, cheap paintbrush, because we want to make sure that we don't ruin it when we're using it with glue. So start by tearing your collage papers into pretty large pieces and throw away any photographs that might have been with those pages. Then once those are torn into pretty large sections, you are going to begin by adding your glue to your container, starting with a wet paintbrush. And so for each piece, paint glue exactly where you want it to go on the white paper, and then place your piece of collage on top of it. You don't want them to overlap a whole lot, just really fit more edge to edge. But you do want these pieces of paper to go off of the edge of your paper. You don't want to leave any white gaps where the white cardstock is showing through. And if you notice that corners or edges of your papers are not getting glued down all the way, just lift up that corner a little bit and put a little bit of extra glue underneath it as you're working. That'll make sure that everything is glued and sealed down really nicely, but also being careful not to get glue on top of your collage pages. And there's two really good important reasons why. If you get glue on top of your collage papers, those pages will no longer accept any watercolor paint, which we are going to add more to this collage later. The next reason is because if you have smooth magazine pages, it may accidentally smear all of your watercolor paints because they haven't actually absorbed into the paper. So be very careful about not getting glue on top of your collage pages. Now, as I work to fill in all of the white spaces, you can see that I'm using smaller pieces. And you may want to add smaller pieces on top of larger pieces. And to do that, take the small piece and flip it over on your scrap paper, add glue to the back, and then very carefully glue it down to the front of your collage. That way you don't risk getting glue on top of your collage, but you can add in multiple layers. Now, once you've finished layering in your collage, I want you to take your paintbrush and rinse it really, really well in your water cup. And then you need to take this to the sink and wash it with warm water and soap. You want to add a little bit of soap to the bristles and swirl the bristles around like this to make up a nice suds. Make sure that you don't splay the bristles apart going in all different directions, but keep them together where they swirl in the palm of your hand. And then take your thumbnail and scrape from the top of the bristles down to the bottom and rotate that brush all the way around. That is going to help pull and loosen up all the sticky glue that's in the top of the bristles and pull it down to the bottom. Then rinse that really good under the water while swirling it in the palm of your hand, and repeat that process until your paintbrush is nice and clean. I usually do that 2 or 3 times in order to get my paintbrush clean. Then straighten out your bristles and then lay this somewhere flat to dry. Now, once your collage is finished, very carefully, you can throw this scrap sheet away because it's probably covered in glue. But we're now going to cut out and cut off all of the excess paper that we don't need. So if you flip it over onto the back, you can see where all the extra edges are. And then with scissors, just very carefully go through and trim those off. Now, one of the things that I want to mention about this is you can see right now, this is very abstract. Everything that I've done so far in this stage of the project has been very loose, and it hasn't taken a lot of time, and it's actually been sort of a little messy, but because I've used a color scheme with my analogous colors, and because I've used mark making that has a theme to it, variations on that theme of line work, you can see those sort of pop out through different sections. And what that does is it helps create variety and interest in this abstract collage. And it also makes it look very unified in the fact that things are similar throughout, but still has a good sense of variety. So hopefully your collage has turned out really successful. This is a great technique to practice and build on, and it makes your work look much more complex than just starting with a plain background. I love doing some of these just because it's really, really fun. Now, if you're like me and you had a bunch of leftover collage papers, save those because you can use those in your sketchbook. You can do something else with them. I always like to save scraps just because you never know when you might want to use them again and create something new.